People who've seen nice people finally snap. What happened? My best friend had lost his mom to murder a few months prior when we were in the 10th grade. Somehow he had pulled himself together just enough to start going back to school. I don't know how he handled it with being an only child and growing up without a father. His mom was all he had. A kid that thought he was popular that got on everyone's nerves, cracked wise to my friend's face about his mom's death. What he said isn't exactly sure. My friend threw him on the ground and punched him in the face multiple times. The end result was a broken nose, a broken left orbital, and my friend got kicked out of school. We were very grateful he taught him a lesson, but saddened it had to come at such a high cost. In middle school, my 6'2" gentle giant friend, who was literally the nicest guy I'd ever meet, got teased about his mom by some short popular kid. My friend no hesitation picked him up by his shirt and slammed him against the locker at eye level and said, "Never talk about my mom like that." One of my favorite memories of him. Guy I'd worked with for about 10 years. Never could get ahead at work. Wasn't bad but just didn't really excel. He was always kind. Always ready to laugh and crack a joke. Never saw or heard him be mean. But apparently him and his wife were having some trouble. Though I'd not heard him talk about it much. But one day while his youngest was out at church with a family member, he flipped out and shot his wife, then himself. Another woman I worked with even prior to that, but at the same place, was super sweet and always smiling. She was mid-divorce and drowned her 3-year daughter in a bathtub at her dad's, the kid's grandpa's, because she didn't want to share her with her ex after the divorce. She's still in prison as far as I know. Both are kinda ducked up. This woman, Mary, I worked with, was always pleasant and cheerful, said hello in the lunchroom and was generally liked. She worked in finance in special projects. She said she wanted to retire in a few years and she had been working there for 15 years. Her boss started pressuring her to complete our annual budget report faster. But this thing is huge and comprehensive and a figurative beast. Mary told the boss it would be ready in a couple of weeks, per the usual schedule. The boss said that it needed to be completed within 1 week to give to the higher ups. Mary said it wasn't possible. Boss emailed Mary plus CC a bunch of co-workers and the assistant managers, calling Mary out for a poor work ethic and for making the department look bad. Mary said it wasn't possible and didn't appreciate being bullied. She put in her notice to retire by the end of the week, leaving her boss high and dry. She was the only one who could do the budget report in a timely manner, so the department was double ducked. Good for her. Back in 5th grade, I was super lucky to have the elementary school's favorite teacher. Every single student loved her. My class was always super loud and annoying. We were working on some assignment before pay, and everyone was passing her off. She was only allowing students to go out if they finished the assignment. My slow ass was unfortunately one of the last kids in the room. This one student, who was a god-awful and annoying it-bag kid, was being way over the top. My teacher got up, put her hands over her ears and just started screaming, "Shut the duck up. Just shut up. Shut up. Shut up." And she just stomped out of the room still screaming with her hands covering her ears. All of us just sat there in horror. Couple of kids just left to go to pay, and I sat there just trying to finish the assignment. Our principal came into the room a few minutes later just telling the rest of us to go out to pay, but she made the it-bag kid stay in the room with her. He was moved into the other 5th grade teacher's room after this. She was completely normal and fine after coming back, and there was nothing else that went wrong for the rest of year. Just worked her ass off and made all of us love her by her caring soul and all of that fun stuff. But that moment completely traumatized me. A long time ago, I used to do call center tech support for fairly complex issues. A really nice, quiet guy went through the same training class. He talked if you talked to him, but never went out of his way to chat. Right after training, the call center changes a ton of stuff. We start getting squeezed on the amount of time we can do documentation, how much research time we have, just metrics in general. It was utter bullet, because the favorites got to go on smoke breaks as often as they wanted with the managers. We'd essentially be punished for that because we had to keep the average numbers in a certain area. He did all the right things. Talked to his manager, talked to their manager, then to HR. It kept getting worse. Plus enforced overtime. Then he got a super long call. He was on it at least 2 hours about a complex issue, and the customer was just straight up abusing him, but he had to take it because the managers wouldn't give permission for him to hang up, and they were basically screaming at him to resolve this issue and get to his next call. But we couldn't end calls. The customer had to. One day he just stood up, stepped onto his chair, then onto his desk, threw his headset on the desk and sort of growled something like "duck this." Quietly, he looked around, staring people in the face, especially the people who took those long breaks and the managers. Then he walked out and no one ever saw him again. Everyone was super quiet and afraid to move or say much of anything. When I was in high school, my group of like 6 friends were sitting at a round table in the cafeteria for breakfast. A table over, some girls had been tossing small chunks of their food in our direction. My one friend, M, wore her hair in an unusual, spiked up style, and I guess the girls at the table were trying to land food in her hair while cackling to themselves. Cue my quiet, sweet, introverted friend, K, getting so angry I swear steam was coming out of her ears. One of the girls had thrown a decent sized piece of her egg patty at us and it landed on the floor near K's foot. K proceeded to step on the egg patty, pick it up off the ground, walk over to the table of bullies, and shove the egg directly into the mouth of the one WHO had thrown it. This was such an amazing moment in my high school memory. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, as K was the last person I would have expected to do that. Of course she did get in trouble, but she didn't regret it one bit. A lady where I used to work was subjected to constant sexual harassment by a much older co-worker and the company failed to do anything about it. He was showing up at her house, eventually forcing her to move house. After she moved into the new house, he bought the house next door. She arrived to work with a baseball bat and stopped at reception to ask if Tom was in. When they asked why, she calmly told them she was there to kill him. She walked upstairs to his office. Reception called ahead and had him take the fire escape, and she instead demolished his office until the police arrived. She was not charged. The company and police knew she had announced her intentions to reception as a cry for help, so she didn't actually find him, because it was clear that if she had found him she would have killed him. She took some sick leave and eventually returned to work, and the company put her on a project with this guy as her manager, because duck protecting victimized women, right? Older brother's wedding. He's a very nice guy, almost too nice. He had a horrible girlfriend. He adored her though. She told him that he wasn't good enough and that she would break up with him unless he bought her this super fancy ring and married her. He did. His wedding was very stressful, and she was extra nasty. After they cut the cake, she got herself a huge slice and left him with none, telling him he should go on a diet. For context, he was underweight. He was working his way up to average. He snapped, threw a handful of cake at her pretty dress and hair, then told her to expect divorce papers to sign. He proceeded to scream, cry, and rant about how horrible she was and how she made him suicidal. He's better now. They split up and live in different continents. Sorry for bad grammar and typos. I'm on mobile. Also sorry for flaws in the story. This was quite a while ago. Close bracket. There are 3 things all wise men fear: the sea and storm, a night with no moon, and the anger of a gentle man. Patrick Rothfuss. Back in the 6th grade I was in a class with this kid we'll call Hudson. Now Hudson was the nicest, calmest kid in the entire school and almost never spoke a word. Then came along someone who we'll call Will. Will was from a nearby city, and since we were all from a small little town, he thought of himself as above everyone else. This resulted in him being an overall piece of it to everyone around him, whether it be students, EAs or even teachers. One day Will decided he wanted to try picking on Hudson, who was sat quietly reading a book. Will walked up to him, spat in his face and took his book and proceeded to tear out pages from it. Now, Hudson was a huge bookworm, so seeing a book having its pages being torn out by Will must have snapped something, because he lets out this unholy shriek and launches himself out of his chair and right onto him. Hudson then proceeds to beat the absolute crap out of him, and then just when you thought he was done, he grabs the book and begins smacking him with it. I'm talking meaty slaps here, these could be heard very clearly. After almost a full minute of Hudson beating him with a book, a teacher finally returns to the class only to see the quiet kid beating the ever-loving it out of the prick with Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows. if I remember correctly, Will managed to get off with only 3 days suspension and Hudson got at least a full week. When Will came back, he had a broken nose and enough bruises to make him look like a human grape if you looked at him right. Needless to say, Will didn't mess with anyone after that. Edit. My first Reddit awards. Thanks kind strangers. Edit. 2 thanks for my first gold kind strangers. There was a kid at my school in about 7th grade. His name was Frederick. He was loved by everyone. Was so nice and donated to charity regularly. Everyone knew him and respected him. One day a new kid came to our school. We'll name him Josh. Josh was a big douche. He hit people, pushed them around, threw food at people during lunch, just honestly a big ass. Well, one day he decided to pick on Fred by doing his normal it, and Frederick just went ballistic. Punching, screaming, kicking. They were both suspended for 2 or 3 days. After their suspension they both came back and Josh had a black eye, bruises on his arms and left leg, and he looked awful. Josh thought everyone would start to hate Fred after what he did to him. But nope. Everyone was tired of his it and picked on him for how bad he looked. Fred was just loved more for this incident, though he told me he got grounded for a week. Edit. Some people are asking how he donated to charity regularly. I meant he and his family did volunteer work, like fundraisers, and his parents always donated to charity about twice every month. I had just started high school and there was a new kid. I was from a 1 primary 1 high school town, so all the kids already knew each other. He was a giant aboriginal kid who was quiet with no friends, so my friend and I befriended him. We always chatted to him and he was so lovely, always softly spoken and generally just so nice, like holding doors open for us and bashfully smiling when we would go out of our way to be friendly to him. Anyway, he started getting picked on by the bad boy of our grade relentlessly. One day he snapped and beat him up with a garbage can and was expelled, and I never saw him again. One of my middle school friends, whom we'll call Bob, was about a half foot shorter than everyone else. Everyone was around 5 feet. He was an interesting, in a good way, dude. Interested in learning, played video games, was great to hang out with, but he looked scrawny. Didn't look like he could hurt anything if I'm being honest. For some context to the story, our gym teacher was an asshole. Gave nicknames, some good, some bad, to everyone. He was always sarcastic, always berating everyone, speaking down to us instead of encouraging them. One day the gym teacher says something about Bob's mom, which Bob's mom had fibromyalgia and some other conditions making her weak and unhealthy not by choice, and something in Bob snapped. Bob completely took down this 6.5 feet monster gym teacher. Gym teacher looked like he stood no chance at that time. They were quickly pulled apart and Bob got expelled and had to move school while the gym teacher was fired for fighting a student and being an overall asshole. Edit. AWW my first silver. Thank you. The quarterback drunkenly tried to abuse her, left him with a black eye, broken arm, and both sprained ankles. Well, rightfully so. I mentioned this in another thread. Samoan friend. Happiest, most friendly guy you ever want to meet. Some guy said something about his sister and of course it made him mad. My friend went after him and caught him. Punched about 3 times and we realized he was going to kill him. It took 3 of us normal sized guys to hold his arm back from hitting the guy one more time. We told the other to run. Like run ducking now. He did. Our friend was mad at us for a while for stopping him, then he went home. The next day it was as if nothing happened. He just went back to being a super nice guy. P.S. I forgot, a couple days later our friend's big brothers were looking for that same guy that got the crap beat out of him. I don't think they found him but never did see him again. Freshman and sophomore year the same kid gave me it at the bus stop and the whole walk home. Every single day, non-stop harassment. Just kept needling me constantly. So many people asked me why I took it, but I was just really shy and passive at that age. I stayed quiet and didn't react. One day the kid tried to push me into some bushes thinking it'd be funny. He'd never gotten physical before. I grabbed his wrist and put him on his ass. He went down on his back and when he tried to get up I put the past 2 years into a single punch that put him right back down. Next day in school kid had the darkest black eye I'd ever seen. He wasn't at the stop for the next few days, and when he started taking it again he never said another word. I shocked a bunch of people. But turns out lots of other kids hated this guy and were jealous I gave him what he had coming. It did a lot of good for me, and the positive reaction kind of helped me come out of my shell. 10/10 would punch again. My best friend X found out someone was being mean to me. So X told the dude, a hole, to leave me alone. A hole came up to me and slapped me. X seen it and smashed a desk on a hole's head. X was known for never being mad. And the most I had seen before that day was X kicking a chair from a game. So seeing him break a desk on this guy's head scared me. But he didn't stop. X got down and was laying into this guy. It took so many people to get X off of him. And they had to drag the dude out. X did get suspended. And so did a hole. Honestly, I feel both safe and terrified of X. To know that he is so protective of me is comforting. But to know what he can do. An acquaintance of mine, Daryl, was always a quiet kid that bothered nobody. Given that he was 6 feet 5 inches and 250 pounds. He played football and was generally respected and liked. One day in Spanish class the class clown was making his usual rounds talking it. Until he got to this one girl, Ellie. He never really made fun of people of the other 6. So everyone around him was telling him to duck off. But he kept going and finally got to the birthmark on her neck that was very large and dark red. He told her that it dropped her a few numbers down. At this point just about everyone and their grandma in the class was standing up about to rush him. Save for Daryl and a few others, until Daryl got up, waltzed over to the class clown, picked him up by his hair and said, and I quote, "If you don't shut the duck right now I am going to put you through that ducking wall." Points to the nearest wall. He dropped the clown and walked away. A few seconds later, with his band of merry men behind him, the clown tries to jump Daryl in the middle of the class. Daryl then proceeds to elbow him across the room, run over, pick him up by the shoulder, and put his hand through the drywall right next to the clown's head. Security by this point was called and both Daryl and the clown were arrested, with both only getting off with fines for damages. Every day, the spackle patch where the hole used to be humbles me every day. Edit. Train of thought. In junior high there was this girl named Rachel. Quiet but popular. Never messed with anybody. Never said an ill thing about another person. One day she was leaving art class and accidentally bumped into another girl. The other girl took offense to this and just started fighting with Rachel. Rachel wasn't ducking playing that day. Rachel took those first few blows and kept taking a few more until she beat the ever loving it out of the other girl. But wait, there's more. The girl Rachel was fighting had a twin, and all of a sudden you hear, "Not my ducking sister Rach." And she starts wailing Rachel in the back of the head. Big mistake. Rachel basically her sister won in submission and turns around and gives sister 2 the same treatment her sibling just received. The quiet, nice girl just took on twins and beat their ducking asses. Well, it was the most glorious thing I saw in junior high school, other than Sarah's wet t-shirt when we had an Randa day. Lol, I hate seeing people get jumped, or in this situation try to jump somebody, so this was justice. I wish we had cell phones back then.